Okay, my people, here we are for round 2 of the workshops. This time, print workflow. Large format printers, the Epson Sure Color P8000 is the one we have at the Boor Sculpture Studio. That's the one I'm going to show you right now. And before you go and report me, I do have my mask. I'm just not wearing it because I put a sign on the door that says, "Don't walk in. I'm naked." I mean, recording. And I also have my industrial hand sanitizer, so I'm safe. So what we're going to do here, I'm going to walk through how to load the printer. I'll talk about paper choices. I know some of you have already gotten some requests for printing on fabric, canvas. These printers, I like to say they'll print on everything. We have learned the hard way that there are some materials they won't print on very well, like toilet paper. Doesn't take a sheet of drywall particularly well. But there's a bunch of papers available, and I can walk you through where to find them. Know that the fine art papers, the ones that are archival, meaning they last, between 100 and 300 years before they fade, they're real expensive. They're super expensive. So, well, we'll talk about it. Okay, so step 1, we got to get this paper loaded into the printer. What I'm printing on is made by a company called Moab, and it's called Entrada Rag Bright 290, which is the weight of the paper. It's super fancy paper that I use for print editions of a particular kind of work, and I'll show you why in a little bit up close. But you open up the box, you get these little spools, cores that come off. Retain those because that holds the paper in the center of the box and keeps it from getting crushed if the box gets roughly handled. It's wrapped in plastic. You don't want to take that off. And then there's a little sleeve of paper around it that holds it together. Keep that on while you load it. And these things are kind of complicated. There's 2 sizes of cores, a 2-inch and a 3-inch. Maybe you can't see that, so maybe I'll have to take a close-up picture of it. But there's the setting for the 2-inch. Move that little thing over, and then you have it set for 3-inch. With the lever out, it is unlocked. With the lever in, it is locked. Other side. Make sure you get these things all the way against the paper, tight and locked, or you will get the paper will run unevenly through the printer and eventually start to tear, which is no. So to actually load it into the printer, we want to start on the right side and gently, please, because there's a lot of stupid plastic parts on this thing, position it all the way to the right and move the left side over, and very important, to lock it. Now you can very carefully remove that little collar that holds the paper together and discard. It is too small to make a print on, so don't get excited about that. Now, you need to press this little button over here. It has a very confusing little icon, but it's basically to raise or lower the platen or the pressure bar. Raise that up, start feeding the paper, and you'll hear, in a second here, we'll hear the vacuum kick on. And then run it through the printer until you can see it, and hit the button again to reset the pressure plate, and close the cover. Now we got to make some selections. Let's walk through those. Now it's going to ask us if we like the settings, and the last settings that whoever used this printer used are going to be programmed. It turns out it was me, so I'm going to say, yeah, keep the settings. Note that it is set for ultra smooth fine art. There's a little symbol there that denotes roll of paper with tiny little scissors next to it. That means it's set for auto cut. That is what I want. If that's not what you want, then turn that off. The only reason you wouldn't want that by the way, is if you intend to trim these up in your studio and you want it to print into one giant roll, one unbroken giant roll. I prefer to have it cut it to the size of the print. You also want to notice here that we've got ink levels are displayed. This is going to tell us which inks are going to run out first. And we can make the necessary changes. Looks like our maintenance tanks, the brown ones on the right, those are going to be needing to be addressed soon, but not before it actually tells you to address it. And it looks like very light magenta and matte black are the ones that are going to run out, and yellow will run out soon. Everything else looks pretty full, so we're good. Important to note that this printer is set for matte black ink. That's because of the kind of paper I'm using. Here's an example of a few different paper surfaces from kind of radically glossy. This is a very, very shiny print. It kind of simulates the look of a conventional glossy photograph. Very fragile surface. If you want glossy, that's the way to go. This is a very, very matte surface paper. In fact, it's got a lot of, as they say, tooth. This is Somerset velvet. It's an etching paper, but it's specially coated for pigment inks. That's important. This is kind of in between. This is something called silver rag, Museo silver rag. It's kind of like a fiber-based archival, slightly glossy surface. And this is something in between. This is the Moab Entrada. It's a smooth surface, but it's a cotton rag paper, so it feels like paper, looks like paper, holds line quality well. But when photographing elements that have drawing in them, it looks like a drawing. And that's important for the work I'm about to print. And this is just a close-up of the texture of the paper here. So you can really see the tooth of the paper. So for a photograph of drawings, it's actually pretty appropriate, works really well. This is the Museo silver rag up close. It's a cotton fiber paper, but with a glossy coating that has a little bit of texture to it. This is just another example of the Somerset velvet up close. You can see a very, very stippled surface, textured surface. This is the Entrada Rag Bright 290. Holds line quality, photographic description really well, but also since it is a matte surface paper, it holds simulates the look of a drawing really well too. Okay, it is screen share time. Okay, so what we got here is an image in Photoshop that I would like to make a print of. And step one, I'm not going to cover at this time. Step one is to calibrate this monitor and ensure that you're working in the correct color space. Monitor calibration is pretty straightforward, but I'm not going to do that sitting here at the Boor. I'll do that from home and cut that in later. So first we want to find out what kind of image this is. So image mode, it is an RGB color image, 16 bits per channel, and it is the TIFF file. Next, how big is this? Right now, this is a 46 and something by 54 inch print at 300 DPI. These printers print at the output size at 300 DPI. So without getting all geeky about file size and physical dimensions and resolution, let me just say that whatever the working resolution is of your file, whether it's scanned film or a digital image, you want to basically work backwards from the size print that you want to make, meaning pre-visualize how big a print you think you're going to make, and that file at 300 dpi, that's the size in terms of megabytes that your image needs to be. So to make a 45 or 46 by 58 print at 300 dpi, I need a 1.36 gigabyte file. If I don't have that, I'm not making a 46 by 58 inch print. Not at the resolution that I need to hold the description and the little weird details on this image. However, right now, I don't want to make that big of an image. So if I just change the size with resample turned off here, and I go to 16 by 20, the resolution shoots up to 870 dpi. That's more than I need, and I'm still processing a 1.36 gigabyte file. So what I want to do then, let's go back to 300. I want to turn on resample. When you want to make the file smaller, resample is a good button to turn on because it will actually make the file smaller. You can get into a lot of trouble if you're trying to go the other way. If you're trying to make an image larger through resampling, that is magic and it's bullshit. Resampling up, making a file larger than it was when you captured it, whereas it is logically impossible, the computer doesn't care and it will just do it. And it will do it by resampling, which is interpolation, which is filling in the spaces in between all the missing pixels with like Photoshop magic. And it doesn't really work. So lay off of that button when you're trying to scale up. Unfortunately, the answer you don't want to hear is you need to reshoot it at higher resolution. So I don't need to reshoot this at higher resolution. It's too big. I want to make it smaller. I'm making a 16 by 20 print on a 20 by 24 inch piece of paper. I just loaded 24 inch roll in the printer. So width is 20. Note that I had the little thingy on the aspect ratio locked so that when I change one, the corresponding edge also changes. So now it's 16 by 20, resolution is 300, good to go. Click OK. And it does some processing because it goes from 1.36 gigabytes down to, what did that say? 100 something? 164 megs, much smaller file. All right, double click the hand tool, centers it on the screen. Looks about the same, but it's not the same. If I double click the magnifying glass, which takes me to 100% magnification, so I still have an edge, right? I want to be able to see this edge of the paper, but if I back up and go to undo image size and I look at that same edge, this is a terrible image to demo with because it is cut paper with hard edges plus pixelated edges because it's a model made of photographs of Google Earth. But anyway, what I want to do is I want to have this confusion between these pixelated jaggedy edges and very clearly described hard edges of paper. So that when standing in front of this print, you can, initially it looks digital, but then the closer you walk up to it, the more you realize, wait a minute, this isn't what it's pretending to be. This is paper. Tricky guy. Okay, so let's go back to redo image size. Take it back down. Okay, now to get this ready to print, it is a TIFF file. It is flat. I do not have layers. Note over in the layers palette. I don't have alpha channels. If you create a selection and you want to save that selection to turn it on for future use, when you save it, it will save it as a fourth channel, an alpha channel. You don't want to be printing a file that has an alpha channel. It will cause all kinds of problems. In addition to just being slow. I do not have paths either. I haven't designated paths. If you don't know what that is, I'm not going to explain it right now. Basically, I want a flat, clean, ready to print TIFF file, not JPEG. Don't print to the Epson with a JPEG. Don't print to the Epson with a Photoshop file, a .psd file. Don't print to the Epson with anything other than a flat TIFF RGB colors. Let's look quickly at our preferences in Photoshop. We go to General. And then move this over so that you can actually see it. Okay, I don't care about any of this. I don't care about any of this. I don't care about any of this. Tools, don't care about. Don't care about. File handling, don't care about. Performance, this is kind of important. Right now, we have a available RAM. It looks like 13 gigs of RAM. Photoshop is only using 70%. Well, here's the thing. In addition to Zoom, I'm not really using anything else other than Photoshop. I'm only using Photoshop and Zoom is not sucking up much RAM. So I'm going to crank this up, and it's probably going to need to be restarted to take advantage of that. But I'm going to take it up to 85% of the available RAM. That's pretty important. Photoshop is really greedy and wasteful when it comes to RAM. It opens the entire 1.6 gigabyte image into RAM, and every change is saved into RAM in addition to being written to the disk. So you want to crank that up. And then speaking of writing to the disk, if you have additional hard drives, and right now I do, I have the startup disk, which is my hard drive on my laptop. I'm working off my laptop right now, even though I'm in the Boor. I do have a 4 terabyte backup disk connected. I do want to use that as startup disk. Not a huge deal, but especially when you have a solid state drive on most, modern Mac Pro, whatever it is, MacBook Pro laptops, they have solid state disk. They don't have a mechanical spinning disk that's magnetically read. But for machines that do have those slower disks, you will find that if you don't have enough RAM, the computer, when you're working on a large Photoshop file, you'll hear the hard drive like, working, spinning. The way to cut down on the amount of time spent writing to scratch disk, which slows your computer down, you get the little beach ball that tells you to wait, you can't do anything, is to either have more RAM in your computer and allocate more to Photoshop, or have a solid state drive connected and use that as scratch disk. It'll be much, 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 much faster than a mechanical drive. Anyway, now I want to show color controls, and I forget where they hide that. Under edit, it is under edit. Go to color settings. Okay, so out of the box, your computer is going to be set for sRGB. And I'm telling you, you're going to want to change that. In this lab, we use Adobe RGB 1998 as the working color space. I'll get into color space a little more when I talk about calibrating the monitor in a bit, but important that you lock that down. Set it for Adobe 1998 and forget it. And when we go to print, this will become it'll become a little more apparent why we do this. Scanners, monitors, the computer you're working on, everything is kind of locked into a common color space, which allows us to have like complete control in 360 degrees from capture to working to output. There's another kind of color profile that we'll talk about when we make the print. It's very, very important, and that's the paper compensation profile. All right, blah, blah, blah. Let's now get this file out the door and loaded to print. So I go down to File, Print, but that is just the very beginning. Okay, so right now, this thinks that I want to make a 24 by 10 inch print. I do not. I am set for the Epson Sure Color P8000. You want to make sure you're connected to the right printer. I also have, a printer in my office and a printer at home, so I want to make sure that you're connected to the correct one. And yeah, you do have to be physically connected via USB to the printer. So I'm printing from my laptop because I'm special. You will print from this workstation that is closest to the printer. The little Mac Mini, you'll log in as yourself. and you'll print from this machine. If you're working in fine arts and you're not sure which printer which computer connects to the printer, follow the cable. Look at the printer. Where's the USB cable go? That it's very likely the nearest computer in the room. That's the one you print from. We don't do network prints. A lot of reasons for that I won't get into, but mostly it's because your paper is so expensive. You don't want to inadvertently have someone print out on your fancy paper their work. And that can happen in a print queue that's networked. So back to print settings. First thing I want to do is change the paper size. It is not 24 by 10. It is 20 by 24. If you can't find 20 by 24 in the list of available menu options, then you're going to have to go down here to Manage Custom Sizes. And am I missing 20 by 24? Nope, not there. Okay, so we're going to go to Manage Custom Sizes, and I'm going to create a new paper called 20 by 24. Now I haven't really done anything other than give a new paper, the name 20 by 24. Note that it is still 8.5 by 11. So I need to manually change the width to 20 by 24. The non-printable area you're going to want to set as the printer itself, and click OK. Now I got a 20 by 24 piece of paper. And I'm not sure why it says 44 by 600 inches. Let's go back and see what went wrong there. Yeah, it defaulted. How dare it? Oop, 20 by 24. Click OK. That's more better. Okay. Okay, that's just in the layout. So now I have a 20 by 24 paper size. I'm going to go to printer settings. Skip all these other things. Go straight to printer settings. All right. We are set for roll paper. However, the media type that comes up is whatever I printed on last from this laptop, and it's premium luster photo paper. Don't want that. We're set for fine art, ultra smooth fine art paper. That's pretty super important. Maybe one of the most important things in the workflow. The ink is matte black ink. If photo black is selected, that's for printing on glossy paper or luster surface, which is the stippled yet shiny surface. You would need to use photo black ink. Photo black ink will work on matte paper. It will also work on shiny paper. However, matte black ink will only work on matte black paper. It will not work. You'll get very, very unsatisfactory results if you try to print. In fact, the printer probably won't let you, but if you try to print using matte black inks on glossy paper, if it lets you, it will look like crap. So if photo black works for both matte and shiny paper, why bother with matte black ink? Obviously, there's a reason, because they sell you a $170 matte black cartridge for matte paper. If you do a side-by-side like Pepsi Challenge comparison, where you look at a print on the same matte paper that was printed with photo black versus matte black, you will see less what they call dot gain in the matte black ink, meaning the shadows will have a little more definition and a little more texture and a little more detail. So it's in the shadow areas where the matte ink on the matte paper is a noticeable advantage. If you don't have a lot of shadows in your image, or you don't care about dot gain, which is the amount of spread when liquid hits paper, it spreads out, and that is a measurable amount. It's one of the things that the color profile does, is it kind of dials that and compensates for it. But if you have really, really fine line quality and you want to retain that, and you're printing on matte paper, then you're going to want to use matte black ink. I always turn off high speed. There's nothing high speed about this process, other than how fast I'm talking right now. Making one of these prints, especially if you're making like a 40, like that last print, 46 by 60 something, is real slow. And turning on high speed doesn't really speed it up, in my humble opinion. Okay, click save. And notice in my preview that it's the wrong way. That's because the layout right now is set for portrait. I want to set it for landscape. That's also super important. And here's where I get to flight check the fact that I do have a beautiful 2-inch border around this print. If something else shows up in here and the print, when the layout's oriented in the correct way, if this doesn't look like the print you're going to make, except smaller and glowing, then you did something wrong, which is usually the answer to every problem when you email me. I'm probably just going to say, you did something wrong. Okay, so remember when I said that selecting the paper type is the second most important thing in the workflow? This thing I'm about to do is the most important thing in the workflow. Color handling. You do not want the Epson driver to manage the color. The Epson driver ships free with the printer. Yes, it's a really, really expensive printer, but the driver is, well, I'm not gonna say anything bad about it. It's not pro level. You want to use Photoshop to manage the colors. Super important. Super, super, super important that you check Photoshop. Then the printer profile. This is determined by the paper. If you don't know what paper you're printing on, look on the side of the box, look on the edge of the box. It will say right there, Epson Premium Luster Photo 160, or what say this is? Entrada Moab Rag Bright 290. So first thing you do, shop around and see if you have that profile in the list of profiles. If you don't, then you may need to go and download it from the paper manufacturer's website. And it's called an ICC profile, and you will find it on their website. And you're going to have to then notify CAS Computing that you need that profile installed, because you can't install it yourself on these computers. So that is CASComp, CASCOMP at albany.edu. Send a note. That is Adam. You may have met Adam Cowie by now. And just say, hey, I just downloaded this, and Danny told me to email you. I need this profile installed, and you would email him the profile, the paper profile. But let's see. I also know from experience that there's one of these Epson out of the box that works. So it's this one. Ultra Smooth Photo. No. It's one of these, and it's matte black ink. I'm gonna go for it. It's probably wrong, but break my own rule. Ultra Smooth Photo. All right, let's see if this works. So again, last chance to flight check. This looks good. I don't ever turn on match print colors. This gives you a kind of visual representation of what the print's going to be, and it's always a little worse because this is a glowing LCD monitor. You're about to make a print on paper with archival pigment inks. That's the reason I keep saying pigment. That's kind of important. These printers are only archival because they use specially formulated pigment inks, not dye-based inks. Dye-based inks are a lot easier to make all the colors with. Pigment is more stable, at least in this application. It's more stable and a little more complicated to make all these colors, which is why we have to calibrate the monitor, why we have to be really careful about the color management. Okay, so I think I'm ready, and the printer says ready to go on the little readout. So click print. It's going to spool the print. It's going to take a couple of seconds, and if you don't hear the printer click on, something has gone horribly wrong. And something may have gone horribly wrong because I don't hear the printer clicking on. What does it say? It says ready. Should have a print in the pipe. So I'm going to go down here to a little error message that I see happening, and it says the printer is offline. And that would be because, Oh, that would be because I'm an idiot. I didn't plug it into my laptop. It's plugged into the Mac Mini. Okay, let's kill that print job. Yeah, okay. You get what you pay for, people. All right. Disaster averted, sort of. Okay, now I'm connected. Let's try that again. Let's try that again. File. Print. Print one copy. Photoshop manages, ultra smooth photo, ICC, yada yada, and print. And that sound means it's going. And there it is. So here's my print queue. If I wanted to right now, since this says that it's printing, page 1 of 1, and it's going to take a while. I mean, it's going to take 15 minutes. I can go now and save this file. And since I took a 1.6 gigabyte file down to 160 megabytes, I'm not going to want to replace that. I'm going to want to give it a new name so that I don't get rid of my ginormous file from 4x5 film. I'm going to call it Panorama. Actually, I'm going to be a little more specific. I'm going to say 11, no, what was it? 16 by 20, 16 by 20. So now I can look at the file and know that, oh yeah, that's the 16 by 20 version of that 40 by 60, 44 by whatever print, and save. And when I save it as a TIFF, I don't need to go back and forth between PC and Mac. If you do, you're going to want to save the byte order in IBM PC because Mac doesn't care. It will read either. But since I don't do that, I pretty much only work on a Mac. I'm going to save it for Macintosh byte order. Don't turn on compression. Just get a bigger hard drive. Okay, and now I could keep working, and I could spool up another print if I wanted to. And since we're doing this like a cooking show, now we'll just cut and look at the big, beautiful 16 by 20 print on the 20 by 24 inch piece of Entrada Rag Bright. Yeah. Okay. So that's the workflow. I'm sure I forgot some things because I don't have anyone here reminding me what I've forgotten. But gonna need your own paper, and you're probably gonna want to get that at either Adorama or B&H. They have the best prices on this stuff. If you need advice about what paper to purchase, talk to me. Talk to someone who does a lot of this. You know, Paul Sunday. Who else does a ton of printing? I don't know. Talk to me. Ask me. If you have paper and you're thinking, gee, this would be fun to print on, or if you have some fabric or anything, please check in with me before you run it through the printer, because not every paper is compatible with these inks, and not every paper is compatible with the feed system on this printer. Transparencies are particularly difficult, and I need to check and make sure that it is actually compatible. The paper will say something like compatible with pigment or ultrachrome, which is the sort of trademark name for pigment inks that Epson uses. So it's ultrachrome or pigment-based inks. If it doesn't say that, it might still be, but I'm going to want to see it before you run it through the printer. Fabrics are particularly fraught. Most fabrics that run through this printer need a backing to give it a little more body and weight, so it doesn't like bunch up and just like destroy the mechanism inside. That's it. Let's look at. So the auto trim function means it makes a nice clean cut, drops it down into the skirt. And first thing you want to check is that it actually looks like the colors in the display. It's not going to glow because it's a print. And then you want to just check for the fine details and make sure that you don't have any dropout, any banding, or sometimes the printer, after it's done like 20 or 30 prints, it'll kind of spit. But this one's perfect, of course. Okay, so I believe that's it. I don't know if there's anything else I need to go over. We talked about the preferences, we talked about the color settings, talked about image size, resolution, etc., etc. So stop sharing. Please stop sharing. Okay, that's it. At least that's the basics of what you need to know to make a big print on our fancy printers. We have, again, this was just the Epson SureColor P8000 that's here at the Boor. It's the sort of highest end one that we have. And again, prints maximum of 44 inches wide. If you need a wider print, you will be going to a service bureau, and you'll probably be paying minimum $200 a print. The Fine Arts Building, we have 44-inch printers in that building. They're slightly older, but they're the same ink technology, same mechanism, virtually the same workflow. So everything I showed you today will transfer to those printers as well. We also have a 24-inch printer and an even smaller one. And the only reason to use those is basically if you have sheet paper, if you have cut sheet paper, the smaller printers like the sheet paper better. The large plotters, the wide format printers, they're really designed to use rolls and to auto cut them when you're at the end of the print. You can load sheets manually one by one by one, but it's a real drag. It's not like you can just put a whole box of paper in the tray and then just go to town. That's more for the small printer. That small printer is located in the basement of the Fine Arts Building, Fine Arts 003. If you think that's the one you're going to be using, let me know and I'll get you a code for that room. The 44-inch printer in Fine Arts is in Fine Arts 115. And again, just let me know and you'll get a code to that room. The code, by the way, will be the last 4 digits of your UAlbany ID number. That's it. That's it. Don't make a mess in our lab. Wash your hands. Wear your mask. Clean the keyboard. Don't drink the hand sanitizer, but sanitize your hands. And let me know if you have questions. All right, y'all. Next time. Okay, we're going to walk through a quick demo of the monitor display calibration process. Involves this jammy, data color, Spider X Pro colorimeter, with all the machines in our labs. And you're going to want to probably, I don't think the application is in the dock on the machines at the Boor or in Fine Arts, so you're going to want to go to the applications folder and locate it. Spider X Pro is what it's called. It's in a folder called Data Color. So launch that. And this would probably be a good time to share my screen, right? Actually see what I'm doing. Okay. Spider X Pro window is up, and first thing, the wizard guides you through this, which is kind of nice. It's good to have a wizard showing us the way. Have you allowed the display to warm up for half an hour? Yes, it's been on all goddamn day, so yes, it's warmed up.
Lighting conditions. Have you checked that no intense light is falling directly on your display? That is something you don't want. It's not likely to be the case in the Boor. The lights all point at the ceiling, so the workspace is pretty dimly lit on purpose by design. In the Fine Arts building, you're going to want to turn the lights down. They dim in the basement in 003. In FA 115, they don't dim because they're fluorescents. They're 4000 K daylight fluorescents. So you turn off half the lights, and you'll figure it out. There's two switches. Turn off half the lights. Don't worry about the display controls. And yes, you do want to have the spider puck plugged in, or nothing happens. The monitors in our labs are these Dell, not super fancy 27-inch LEDs, LEDs? Yeah, LEDs. You're going to want to choose standard LED. I'm working with a fancy monitor, so I'm going to pick wide LED, but you will want standard. Make note of that. If you choose wide, you're going to get a wacky calibration. Click Next. And then what you're going to want to do is do a recalibration of your display. No point in checking the accuracy of it. Just takes just as long to check the accuracy as it does to do a recalibration. The full calibration is when you have a new display. You are plugging it in for the first time and want to use it for printing and scanning, and etc. Then you want to do the full calibration. It takes significantly longer. I just want to do a recal. It's been about a month since I've done this. Click Next. And place the spider on the desk as shown. There it is. Go. Takes a little reading. It says the level is appropriate for typical photo editing. Room light is medium. Of course it is. Accept the recommended settings? Yes. And move on. And now, place the spider. Oh, I didn't do what it said. Go back. So now, place the spider on the display as shown. Center it exactly there. And then click Next. Next. And then wait and watch the pretty colors. Red, green, blue, gray. So it's telling me the gamma is slightly, like 0.6% higher than the target, which I'm totally okay with. If it's significantly brighter or darker than the target gamma or brightness, then you want to manually adjust by poking around on the buttons on those Dell monitors to get it to go brighter or darker, and then click Update. After you make a change, brighter, 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 then click Update. I'm going to pretend that I made a change even though I didn't. Update. And then click Continue. And then hang out. Enjoy the beverage. And look at the pretty colors. So this is creating an externally measured confirmation that you are actually putting out the colors in the color space you say you're working in. We're working in, again, Adobe RGB 1998. That's our color space for the labs. And the computer thinks it's putting out that, but every monitor is different. They're physically different, LED displays. So this is kind of a translation document. It creates a physically measured reference that then creates an ICC profile that says, okay, so here's what's really Adobe 1998 RGB. Yay, it's done. And so we click Finish. And calibration reminder in a month. I'm going to take my little thing off of here. 30 days, you're going to get a reminder. So whatever name it suggests, fine with me. I don't care. You could if you want to be really scrupulous, you could name it with the date, for example, the date that you calibrated. Click save. Congratulations. And then the next few screens are really useless. It's like a little comparison. And you can switch back and forth between the uncalibrated and the calibrated, but you don't really care. You just want to make a print. So click quit and get on with your life. All right, that's monitor calibration, step by step. Do it once a month or when the computer reminds you to do it. Okay, I'm out.